Hi, and welcome to the MCB Community Update. My name's Eric Joseph. I'm the Executive Director of the Audible Local Ledger, located in beautiful Mashpee, Massachusetts. It's part of the Massachusetts Audio Information Network, Maine, your main source for accessible community news and information. We bring local news and information to the blind and print disabled across the state. As part of this podcast, we'll interview the Commissioner, John Oliveira of the Mass Commission for the Blind, quarterly. And in the intervening months, we'll bring experts who have a lot to offer to our community. And we'll listen to what they have to say, we'll ask them some probing questions, and hopefully we'll all learn together. We welcome your feedback and hope you enjoy our series of interviews. And now, without further ado, here is the MCB Community Update. Hi, I'm Eric Joseph, and our guest for the MCB Community Update this month is Karen Hatcher, Director of the Older Independent Blind Program, or the OIB program. Morning, Karen.
Morning. How are you, Eric?
I'm great. You know, you've probably been in this position for a while, and people probably know that who work there, but maybe you can recap a bit of your career and how it led to you becoming the director of the OIB services. How'd you get to where you are today?
Right. So first off, thank you so much for having me. I've actually been the director of the Older Blind program for MCB almost 12 years now, and
wow.
I can hardly believe it. I manage the budget, I manage contracts we have in place. I'm responsible for all of the administrative work as well as outreach to the community, and the list goes on. I actually made my way to Massachusetts from Louisville, Kentucky, where I worked for the American Printing House for the Blind. I did have a business role there, but I actually worked with people who just amazed me. I worked with totally blind engineers, the IT department, which were blind and visually impaired. I had such a great experience that I decided to leave the corporate world, which is where most of my career was focused on. And I came to Massachusetts. I knew people at the Carroll Center, I knew people with Perkins, but I didn't know about the Commission for the Blind. So I ended up through them applying for this position. And I have to say that John Oliveira interviewed me along with another team of people, and here I am. I have had the best experience here, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And switching from business to the nonprofit world is not the direction it usually goes. It sometimes goes the other way around. I had a friend who said, you have to be rich to work in the nonprofit world. And I said, no, I don't think so, because that didn't really work out that way for me. But as the director of the Older Independent Blind program, maybe you can outline a bit. That's a very specific title. Can you outline a bit about what your team brings to people who are blind seniors? And do they have to be seniors? What are some of the qualifications they have to meet, and what exactly is it that your team provides?
Oh, great. Thanks for that question. So the eligibility for the Older Blind program is simply that a person has to be over the age of 55, legally blind, and a resident of Massachusetts in order to receive services through the program. We are funded through a grant from the federal government, and the funding that we receive comes from the RSA, which is the Rehab Services Administration in Washington. The funding complements the state funding that MCB receives as well. And so you know this, every state and territory in the country has an older blind program. All of the funding is based on population. So the goal of the program is that we provide low vision aids and devices, as well as training on the essential skills that are needed for people to remain confidently independent in their homes and communities. And we do this in so many different ways. The team of people that work on OIB, which is the Older Independent Blind Program, we have 3 extremely experienced, compassionate, and professional social rehabilitation workers who meet with new consumers in their homes. They conduct assessments in terms of the individual need, which is what all cases are based on. They'll come back, they'll write up a plan that includes a variety of goals based on what the consumer wants to achieve. The workers do not have to be seniors. However, it is definitely a plus for the positions because they're interacting with the older population. All of this is done through the provision of aids and devices, and that could include magnification, lighting, talking watches and clocks, talking thermometers, large print calendars, safe kitchen utensils, and the list just goes on. The consumers may also need assistive technology training. So, for example, on their iPads or iPhones, they learn the voiceover. They may have computers that they can't operate due to the lack of vision. So we come in and we provide the training to help them remain independent. We partner with the Perkins Talking Book Program, which is open to all who have a visual impairment, as well as anyone with a physical disability and cannot hold a book. And these services are no cost at all to either our consumers or the people applying for the Talking Book Program. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, that's a lot. That's an awful lot. I'm curious though. We've spoken with Alexander Pooler about assistive technology and Ali about into orientation and mobility. What is the distinction between a senior facing those challenges or this transition period as opposed to someone who's under 55? That's part of the assessment and intake, I would guess, when the caseworker approaches them and speaks with them. But how would you approach someone who's under 55? What is different from that than how you approach your group of over 55?
Yeah, well, the people that are over 55, for example, 55 to say 75-year-olds, they have had experience with computers and with technology. So they are the ones that are requesting the IT training, the assistive technology devices, etc. However, I've had 90 to 100-year-old consumers ask for IT training or assistive technology training because they may have received an iPad for Christmas and they need to learn it. So the under 55 population are much more tech savvy than the than the older blind, because many of the older blind never used a computer or never used an iPhone, and they're learning all of this now. Many of them are very independent in our program. So that's kind of the difference. I think technology is more geared on the younger age group because of their their experience with technology through their schooling and through their pretty much their life up until their 40s, etc. And that will go beyond, and that's where I see the older blind program changing quite a bit, because as the people age in to the program, we have to be ready for the technology and the training. In terms of orientation and mobility, the elder population, most of what we provide to them are the support canes, which are the white cane, but they double as support canes. And they're trained in the same exact way that the younger population are, but due to the fact that you have, college kids running around through campus, etc., they'll use a different kind of cane. They'll be trained on a different type of cane, and but all of the training is the same in terms of keeping people safe, and for the identification as well.
Well, I can anecdotally just agree with you on that. When we put out that we're looking for volunteers to read to people who are blind, people will come in who are who are seniors, extreme seniors in some cases, age-wise, and they think they're going to get a physical newspaper and sit in front of somebody on a couch and read to them. They don't know that this is a reading service, and when they encounter the technology, there's often a great deal of phobia about the technology. And I've never done this. I've never read a paper online. I've never had to press a pause to record or not. I don't know what this is. And within literally 10 minutes, all that fear can be dissolved and they can be up and functioning. And there's no one who has come in who was afraid of it who didn't eventually contribute to us. So I do know that you can see it. The young people have grown up with it in their entire life. They grew up with phones. They grew up with an awful lot of technology in their lives. And many of our seniors are transitioning at a point when they were used to doing things that could be analog and now have become digital. So I understand exactly that difference and why a little bit more of that tech training might be necessary with people who are a little more sensitive to, oh, I don't know how to do that. I get
Yeah,
it.
and it's amazing to see the confidence levels just increase so much when the older blind, embrace technology.
Yeah, the smart speaker. I can't tell you how many times I've given an Echo Dot out or some kind of an Alexa device or a Google Home device where I have gotten a testimonial call that said, "You changed my life. I really didn't know that I could use my voice to make a phone call, that I could plan my medical prompts, that I could do all these things that you kind of helped us through. Didn't know that would happen." It's well, it's one of those days you like looking in the mirror because something good happened that day, you know? You were proud of what
Yes,
you did because somebody else's life was impacted in a very positive way. Um,
yeah,
so I'm sure that you have several people who help you go through all of this thing. There's got to be a support team that your entire program revolves around. Maybe you can take us through some of the people that you work with and the roles they play and what people do.
sure. Aside from all of the people within MCB, which would be the rehabilitation teachers, the orientation and mobility teachers, and the assistive technology unit, um, we have contracts in place with three outside vendors who we consider to be our very close business partners in the space of the elder blind program. We work with three different vendors, and all of the funding does come through the OIB program for these vendors to manage certain pieces of the program. So first is the Carroll Center in Newton, and they provide low vision evaluations. They provide a 2-week essential skills program where our consumers could pack their bag and go to Newton, to the Carroll Center for 2 weeks to learn everything from kitchen skills to safe mobility skills to medication management to cooking classes. So there are so much that is done at the Carroll Center for our consumers that increase and improve their confidence levels. We also work with sight loss services on the Cape and the islands, and you're very familiar with them, I'm sure, Eric.
Yes, we are.
They're a very, very close business partner of ours in the management of our low vision peer support groups. There are 14 currently on the Cape and the islands, and I visit them quite a bit. The other vendor that we use is the Massachusetts Association for the Blind, and they manage 37 support groups throughout the Commonwealth. And I have to say that this is probably the most important and best part of the older blind program, because it allows people to come together in a safe space, usually senior centers or, in some cases, churches. But it allows them to come together and to, express their frustrations and express their anger over losing their vision. But it also allows them to gain information because they are with other people in the room that have had and lived through the exact same experiences that they are going through. So it's the only place, I always say, it's the only place you can go to where everyone in that room knows exactly what you're dealing with and what you're going through. They offer emotional support, friendships as well. And it's social interaction. So just getting to and from the support groups is a show of independence. So this group can't be more resilient in my eyes. So I see it every day, and it's just so heartening.
And they're strong advocates for themselves and each other as well. I attend as many sight loss service meetings, either myself or another person in our group, and we do go through what our services are that we offer, but we also do training on smart speakers. But I wasn't prepared, I guess, when I first started going to them for the emotional work that was being done in the group. When we go around and say, well, how did you become the situation that you're in now? And what was it before? What is it now? What do you think of the future? And the amount of support, the emotion, the sometimes tears, sometimes laughter, sometimes poetry. I've heard it all in those groups, and they become very tight and they know each other very well. And the ability to have a network that understands what you're going through is the difference between possible depression and being able to cope and actually excel. And I can't say enough, I can't reiterate enough what you've said about how important those are, because I've seen it with in person, how it's powerful. It's really powerful. And they come out of it feeling better at the end of almost every one of them. They're talking to each other and they're laughing, and they've had, some cookies too at the end or whatever. And everybody is saying, okay, next month we'll be getting together again, and let's make sure the bus gets us all on time, and arranging all the transportation, everything else. Having that kind of a support system is, I think, so critical. And I'm echoing everything you're saying, but having experienced it and felt it in my heart when I'm sitting there, it really is profound what is happening with those support groups and how they step up for each other, and will reach out and just touch a hand and say, it's okay, it'll be okay. and the caregivers are crying and the person is laughing. I mean, it's a very interesting meeting on a lot of levels, all of which are good and positive in the
Mhm.
long run.
Yeah.
So speaking of challenges that people have, and overcoming them and sharing them, what are are some of the challenges you currently face? And I think it's interesting that you have a business background and you set up basically business relationships with three companies, which shows that, what you've done makes you what you are a little bit, it can be
Mm,
brought to what you're doing. I think that's fantastic.
yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that are facing you, and what are some of those opportunities, whether it's budget or
Yeah.
technology, or what's coming down the pike for you?
So, in terms of challenges, um, really, this program, they're few and far between, I have to say. Um, I think the biggest challenge that I face is the fact that the federal funding that we receive and every state and territory receives has not had an increase in over 20 years. So, in terms of the budget, there are times when I have to tighten up the budget. However, we seem to be able to provide pretty much all consumers with what they need. So every year there's an annual report that we all have to complete to the federal government. And part of that report says, one of the questions is, um, you know, what are you challenged with, basically? And I think every single one of us, because I do sit in monthly meetings with all of them, um, we all say the same thing, because of technology and the increase in pricing from our vendors, we've got to have more funding. I mean, I'm able to get through it, probably because of my budget and business background, but it's a little bit tough at certain times when we have to ask a consumer maybe to wait a week or two. um, the funding doesn't come in all in one, bag of money, so to speak. So, there may be times where I have to sort of say, can you wait a couple weeks? But we seem to be able to be successful with the provision of services. Um, the only other challenge I would say, Eric, is um, the the rate at which new consumers are being registered. The three people that work with the over 55s are, I mean, they get very, very busy, and there might be a little bit of a delay in getting to that first home visit, which is so important because that's the visit when they explain services and they conduct an assessment of sorts. So that would be the only, we seem to be in pretty good shape at this point, but we can get behind in those home visits.
My only follow-up would have been along those lines of what you just said, which is, do you feel like you're fully staffed, or is there an open slot now that you're looking to fill, or what? Obviously, everybody would like to have a full staff that is robust and maybe even a few more than you might need. But do you feel like you're in a place where the team you have is the right size for what you need to take on?
Yes, because we have the state workers who, we do have social rehab workers within the state as well. My money, the money that comes from the federal government, um, is provided because, or I've got the three plus myself, um, plus, the contracts, et cetera.
Mhm.
And to add another person would almost be detracting from services because I get X amount of dollars. and those dollars are more going to the people as opposed to paying the team of people that are focused on.
I understand.
You know
That
what I
makes
mean?
total, I
So
do. I totally get that logic. That makes total sense. Business-wise, it makes total sense.
yeah, but I mean the state money that MCB receives is has been increased quite a bit, and we're so grateful for that. So
As we
that
are as
really,
well. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, personally, has there been a specific case or anyone that you've worked with in particular that has been particularly important to you? Someone that personally you might have gotten involved with to try and really work through a challenging case, or anything that might have affected you on a one-to-one basis with one of your clients or your people?
Mm, that's a great question. And yes. So years ago, when I was, I would say I was a rookie of sorts, we had a person who had just retired and became totally blind following a surgery after suffering a massive stroke.
Mhm.
Okay. So the entire family was in shock and they didn't know what to do next. Um, so they contacted the Mass Association for the Blind because I guess it was the first number they found.
Mhm.
And the Mass Association contacted myself at the commission. And within 2 days of the patient returning home, we had a small team from MAB, MCB, and even the Carroll Center. We had a rep come from the Carroll Center. Of course, we had to, run it by the family to make sure they were okay for us to come over, and they absolutely welcomed us, given the severity of the situation. So, over time and many hours of rehab, um, the consumer agreed to attend the Carroll Center for the 2-week essential skills program. And it was very, very intensive because, she had vision one day and the next day, all of her vision was gone. So when we did, I will back up. When we did come into the home, we had an orientation and mobility specialist as well that, helped her to navigate at least through her home. And she had lived in the home for over 40, I think it was 40 or 50 years. So she knew the home front and back. However, she may have become disoriented. So they helped with that on the first visit. But when she came to the Carroll Center, she showed such an amazing amount of strength and resilience. She ended up graduating from the program. And I do believe she came back a couple years later to learn more of the essential skills she needed. So that to me was like, a wow moment, because I got to see, you know, all these partners in place to help this individual. She learned, how to prepare meals. She learned, the navigation safely throughout the community, and so she did eventually start getting out, and she was so grateful for the fact that all three of our agencies or organizations were with her from start, and to get her through that difficult time. And I will say to get the family through that difficult time. Um, so she ended up, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, going to support groups. Her family attended support groups because families are always welcome. So that to me was, I will never forget that one ever. And I had only been with the commission maybe a year when that happened.
Wow, I
So
can see why that would have a very powerful effect on you, seeing it all the way through and then having such resounding success with the adoption and her embracing it after such a traumatic moment in
yeah,
the person's life. Um,
yeah.
well, we've been on the personal side with you, and we'll close with a completely different note, as we always do. Part of getting to know the MCB team, we ask, so who's your favorite musician or band? And then what was your first concert?
Oh wow.
You don't have to be embarrassed if you were young at your first
Oh
concert,
no,
if it
no,
was
no, no,
Raffi or
not
something. That's
not at
okay.
all, not at all. So, the one thing you might not know about me is that I was born and raised in New Jersey. And so, when I think about my favorite band, well, there's no doubt it's Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
The boss. There
I'm
you go.
dating myself now, but and the funny thing about the concert is that um, my father, I was one of six children, and my dad was not a fan of letting us go to concerts. So we either had to sneak or not go.
Okay.
I waited till my freshman year in college, and I went to school up in New Hampshire. And um, so the very first concert I saw, we went down to Springfield, Mass, and I saw Earth, Wind, and Fire,
Ooh, good concert.
who to this day is a favorite band. In fact, I had a friend who had retired at the commission that called me the other day and said, "Hey, Earth, Wind, and Fire is playing in Mansfield this summer." And she gave me the date, and unfortunately, I couldn't be there, or I won't be able to attend. So that was a big darn it.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't be able to recognize any of them anyway, because they're not the same guys from the 70s and 80s. It's a whole
No,
different
exactly.
band
Yeah,
at this
yeah,
point. But
exactly.
what musicians on the Earth, Wind, and Fire side, and what a show and a musician to get behind locally as the boss. I mean, I thought you were going to go with the John Bon Jovi, so I was getting ready to put up the metal horns.
Oh,
But I'm right there with you on the boss. Tremendous, tremendous artist. And I want to thank you, Karen. Thanks. A lot of information that you shared, very useful to our listeners. We have so many people who are listening who are transitioning and have fear in their hearts about what might come next. And much of this podcast effort is to make sure that they know there are services, help, and support there, and that maybe we can take just a little bit of the fear out of what might be coming next for them. And
mm,
you've done a great service by helping us explain to them what might be ahead.
mm.
Um, we'll be back next month with our quarterly update from Commissioner Oliveira. And I want to thank you again, Karen. I'm Eric Joseph, and from the Audible Local Ledger Studios in Mashpee and the statewide Massachusetts Audio Information Network, known as MAIN, make it a great day. Bye for now.
Thank you so much.